When I think about the Summer Olympics, I first think of the athletes who wowed me as a kid. Mary Lou Retton, a fellow West Virginian, earning gold in 1984 in women's gymnastics, or the poster of the Dream Team in my bedroom and their gold in 1992 in men's basketball. And diver Greg Louganis, who won 2 gold medals in 1984, and then in 1988, in a qualifying round on the springboard, something went very wrong.
We're at the diving venue, Jamshel Indoor Swimming Pool, the preliminaries of the men's 3-meter springboard. In the 9th round of the preliminaries, Greg Louganis had an accident. We'll watch him in regular speed. And he hit his head coming past the board, but then he came right to the surface and came out of the pool.
Then Greg Louganis not only qualified for the final round, he went on to win gold in both the springboard and platform events. He became a gigantic star, considered by many to be the greatest diver of all time. And 7 years later, in 1995, Greg revealed that during those 1988 games, he was HIV positive. Here's Barbara Walters prompting him to tell his story.
You hit your head, and there may have been blood in the water. Why were you terrified?
Because Ron O'Brien and myself were one of the few people in the stands that knew that I was HIV positive.
You were in the 1988 Olympics HIV positive.
Again, this was 1988, before Magic Johnson announced he was HIV positive. It was considered a death sentence. And Greg and I talk about what it was like to train and compete holding that secret, while starting early treatment that had its own physical side effects. We also talk about life after the Olympics, which for Greg has included books, a one-man show, and mentoring divers who came up behind him. As the Summer Olympics get underway, I wanted to talk with someone who knows what it's like not just to be an Olympian, but to be one of the best. How did he handle that pressure?
A dive takes less than 3 seconds. In that less than 3 seconds is total chaos. In that total chaos is your creation. And you can never create that ever again.
This is Death, Sex, and Money, the show from Slate about the things we think about a lot and need to talk about more. I'm Anna Sale.
Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Thanks for being here with us, Mr. Louganis. It's nice to see you.
Sure.
Diving legend Greg Louganis met me on video from Southern California, where he grew up and now lives. He still follows U.S. diving and mentors divers, including during the 2000 Olympics in London. He told me that a challenge has been getting younger divers to dream bigger, to raise their standards to the level he was used to.
It was so funny because like my first meeting with the kids, it was like, what's your ultimate diving goal? They'd say, make the Olympic team. And then I said, and then what? And they just looked at me like, this has got to be a trick question, make the Olympic team. I said, don't you want to get on the podium? Don't you want to win? Nobody was training with that in mind. In order to do well at the Olympics, you have to have been there before. You have to visualize what it's going to be like. You know what the venue looks like. You've probably competed at that venue before, so you know what it looks like. You know where the seats are. You know where the cameras are going to be. And I told the athletes, I said, you have to devote minimum 20% of your training to training as if you're at the Olympic Games.
That comment is the kind of thing I expected to hear from Greg. He's one of the best athletes our country has ever seen. I expected a perfectionist. But Greg doesn't describe himself that way. When he thinks about his work ethic, he talks about his mother. Before diving, she put him in dance classes at a young age, and she supported and encouraged him, but not in a way, he says, that felt stifling.
When I started school, I was in kindergarten, and one of the kids was having a birthday party, and I wanted to go to the birthday party, but we had a rehearsal, and the rehearsal was the same time as the birthday party, and my mom said, okay, it's, you got to make the choice. You can either go to the birthday party, and we're not going to be paying for dance classes, if that's what your choice is going to be. Or you can go to rehearsal, which you've already committed to, and continue dance. And so I made that choice, not to go to the birthday party, to go to rehearsal.
How old were you again?
I was 5.
Does that, when you think about the symbolism of that choice, like continuing with your training or going to a party, being surrounded by your peers, doing what kids do when they're 5, is that consistent with sort of how the rest of your childhood kind of unfolded? Were you alone a lot training?
Yeah, I mean, I remember another time I was at the National Junior Olympics. And so I must have been, 11? I wasn't doing well. If they cut to 12, then I was 12. If they cut to 8, then I was 8, or whatever the number was, but I was always the last one to be in to the next round. And so I wasn't performing to my potential, and I knew that. And so there was a break, before the finals, and we went out to lunch, and I didn't want to eat because I was just like miserable. And my mother sat with me. My dad and my coach went in to grab something to eat. And she sat with me and she said, what's going on? I said, well, I'm, disappointing everybody. I'm not performing, up to what I know I can, and everybody's disappointed. I don't want to be here. I said, okay. I said, we don't have to be here. We don't have to go back to the pool. And she meant it. We didn't have to go back to the pool. I didn't have to finish my last dives. I didn't have to go back to finals. And that's when, I thought, well, okay, I'll go back, and I'll do my last few dives. And she said, if we do, then you have to make me a promise. And she said, when you get up on that board, smile. And so then, I got up on the board, they announced the dive, set the fulcrum, and I looked at my mom, and she's like pointing at the corners of her mouth, smiling, and it just made me laugh. And then I did my dives, and I ended up tying for second place.
Second place at the Junior Olympics was a big victory for Greg that day. But it wouldn't be long before he started considering second place a disappointment. In 1976, when Greg was 16 years old, he competed in his first Olympic Games in Montreal. His coach was a man named Dr. Sammy Lee, a former diver who himself had won 2 gold medals. And Dr. Lee really wanted Greg to win the gold, especially because Greg was up against an Italian diver named Klaus DiBiase, who was going for his 3rd gold medal.
Everything in my training was about beating Klaus. So when I showed up in Montreal, I was totally prepared.
You were trained that you were to win the gold medal.
Yeah. And I failed. Also, another fact is highest rate of suicide amongst Olympians, Olympic silver medalists.
Let's pause there. So you're You're 16 in 1976.
Yeah.
It's your first time to the Olympics.
Yeah.
Of all the divers in the world, you come in second place.
Mm-hmm.
And you just said, I failed.
Yeah.
Because you didn't.
I didn't win.
Is that how it felt for you as a 16-year-old?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can see it in my face. You can see pictures of me standing on the podium with my medal, and then Klaus is up there, and he's smiling, and I have my head down.
Uh-huh.
I'm just, it was public humiliation in front of the entire world.
When you look at that picture, how do you feel now, looking at you're young?
Oh, I feel so bad for that little kid.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was tough. It was tough to live through. I mean, and I almost didn't make it because I did try to commit suicide.
How soon after?
About a year.
So you have written about this.
Mm-hmm.
What was the response of the adults? Like, how did taking care of your mental health, how did that go along with continuing to train?
I'm back in that day. It was like, pull up your bootstraps, toughen up. It wasn't too compassionate.
Mm-hmm.
So, it kind of makes you feel defective.
How old were you when you felt like you got good care for your mental health?
I think once I started with diving with Ron O'Brien, I think it's not so much about mental care, it's just about care.
What was different?
I felt seen, heard, and cared for when I found Ron O'Brien.
Uh-huh.
Because he understood. I mean, I'm not a competitor. I'm a performer.
We weren't able to find confirmation about what Greg said about silver medalists and suicide, so I'm not sure if that's true. But it is true that as a teenager, that's what happened to Greg when he didn't win gold. Coming up, Greg shares some of the habits and the ways of thinking that help him to succeed at such a high level.
I didn't look at things the way that a lot of other people did, a lot of other athletes. If it was horrendous weather, I thought, oh my God, what a great opportunity, because it's a God-given opportunity to practice in adverse conditions.
Transitioning your wardrobe from summer to fall can be a challenge, but Quince can help. They offer timeless and high-quality items, ensuring your wardrobe stays fresh and that you won't blow your budget. They have cashmere sweaters from $50, pants for every occasion, washable silk tops, and a lot more. And the best part? All Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands because they partner directly with top factories, and Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I have a few pieces from Quince, and this time of year, I have them layered on top of each other. I put on a sweater as the chill in the evening comes, or I peel down to a scoop neck tee when I'm in the sun. Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials. And go to quince.com/DSM for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/DSM to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/DSM. Hungry Root is the easiest way to eat healthy. They send you fresh, high-quality groceries, simple recipes, and essential supplements. Hungry Root gets to know your personal health goals, dietary restrictions, favorite foods, and how much time you want to spend cooking. And then they build you a personalized cart with all your grocery needs for the week, including easy 4-ingredient recipes. Each order is fully customizable, so you can take their suggestions or choose anything you want. They've got fresh produce, high-quality meat and seafood, kids snacks and meals, and more. I love the combination of recipes that mix up our weeknight dinner routines and really the fast, tasty snacks that we can grab during hangry family emergencies. Everything from Hungry Root follows a simple standard. It's got to taste good, be quick to make, and contain whole, trusted ingredients. And right now, Hungry Root is offering Death, Sex, and Money listeners 40% off your first delivery and free veggies for life. Just go to hungryroot.com/DSM to get 40% off your first delivery and get your free veggies. That's hungryroot.com/DSM. Don't forget to use our link so they know we sent you. This is Death, Sex, and Money from Slate. I'm Anna Sale. I want to ask you about winning your first gold medal of the double-double.
First gold.
It's 1984. Mm-hmm. The first time you get to stand at the very top of the pedestal. And of course, when you get the gold medal around your neck, there is this moment when the world is watching as your flag is raised, as your national anthem is played. What do you remember about that?
Okay, so one of the things is, stepping up onto the podium, reminded, who got me there. Mm-hmm. My mother, who gave me unconditional love, my coach, Ron O'Brien. I was also thinking, I have 10-meter platform. So
the next thing.
Seeing the award ceremonies, just looking at my face, I can tell the difference between 3-meter springboard and 10-meter platform. But when I won the platform, and then I broke 700, which was like huge. Yeah. And I just lost it.
A tearful, joyous, happy Greg Louganis, who has made Olympic history here at the diving pool at USC.
Breaking 700, that was a new Olympic record. Greg won 2 golds, basically in his hometown of Los Angeles in 1984. And afterwards, he was a celebrity. He did a photo shoot with Herb Ritz and appeared in Playgirl magazine. And he thought his Olympic career was done. But at the time, he was trying to convince USA Diving to set up trust funds for Olympic divers to help amateur athletes like him put money away to be financially stable after their careers were over. But he was told it really wasn't an issue if he retired because he was the big diver. So he decided to hold on to make sure they set up trust funds for him and those after him.
So my intent was to stay eligible long enough to get the trust funds put into place. Once the trust funds were put into place, then I would move on. Problem with that was it took 2 years. I found myself at the World Championships in Madrid, and trust funds were finally put into place. And my coach, Ron O'Brien, came to me and said, trust funds are in place, but it's only 2 years to the next Olympics. And my response to him was, okay, I can do 2 years. So that's how 88 happened. 88 was not supposed to happen.
Wow. And privately, as Greg trained, there was the news of his HIV diagnosis. He was gay, but not publicly out. People close to him were also getting sick. Greg kept all that secret until he co-wrote a memoir in 1995. Back in 1988, he started early treatment and kept training.
I was diagnosed HIV positive 6 months prior to the Olympic Games in 88. And the doctors wanted to treat me very aggressively. So I met with Anthony Fauci, in DC. And they said, oh, you're national treasure. We have to protect you. So we'll you make AZT available to you when it wasn't available to everyone. And so they put me on AZT right away. And I didn't have anybody to talk to about my treatment. When I told my co-author, Eric Marcus, that I was on AZT, they put me on AZT right away. He started sobbing, and I didn't understand it.
Oh.
He said, Greg, you don't understand. Any of his friends who were on AZT didn't tolerate it well, or they didn't tolerate it at all.
Yeah.
And he said, you won 2 Olympic gold medals on AZT. He said, you'll never understand what that means. And just recently, probably in the past year, I went back and I watched the Olympic Games through a different lens. And yeah, I wasn't jumping as high. Mm-hmm. I wasn't spinning as fast. So I was like, wow, that was pretty amazing.
Yeah. So it's early 1988 when you're diagnosed. How many people, you said Anthony Fauci was one of the people who knew before the Olympics in 88. Your coach knew in 1988. Mm-hmm. Who else knew that you were HIV positive?
Well, initially I didn't want to tell my coach. I kept that information from him because I was afraid he was going to take it easy on me. Uh-huh. And I knew in order to compete with the Chinese that I had to be in the best shape that I could possibly be in. But I mean, a secret like that was just a little bit overwhelming to keep to myself. But I did ask him, and it was really hard for him, and it was hard for me to ask. I asked him not to tell his wife about my HIV status. So it was just the doctor who was treating me, my coach, Ron O'Brien, Fauci, an attorney friend of mine, and another doctor friend of mine who knew about my HIV status.
Did your family know? Did your mother know?
No. Uh-huh. No. Because I didn't want to worry them, one. And two, I couldn't have disclosed my HIV status. I mean, because I wouldn't have been, they wouldn't have allowed me into the country, into Korea, because there were travel bans. Mm-hmm. For people with HIV. Mm-hmm.
And at the time, people you loved, people you knew, did you know people who were dying of AIDS?
Oh my God, yes. I mean, friends of mine were going to, 4, 5, 6, 7 memorials in a weekend. That was very common. But I was busy. I couldn't go. I was aware, and that wasn't my life. My life was in the pool.
And of course, at the 1988 Olympics, you not only won 2 gold medals, you also had an injury in the middle of competing.
Hitting my head on the board.
Hitting your head on the board during a qualifying round. Mm-hmm. In those few minutes after you were injured, when you had to decide whether to stay competing, was there a part of you, some small part of you, that said, I just can't keep going? Or did that not even flash?
No, I mean, it's in total motion, like life. Life is in total motion. It's not, there's not, pivotal moments. It's just happening. You're just, living it. So my thought was, I saw some zeros up there, and so I thought I was totally out of the running, that there was no way I was going to make the finals. But I had to do my last 2 dives. And so Ron asked what I wanted to do, and I said, we've got a shot. We've worked too long and hard to get here, and I don't want to give up without a fight. And so, so then I got my head sewn up and got back out there.
Do you revisit that moment, like, in your life? Like, do you think back on that often?
No.
Or like, what? No?
No. People bring it up. It's like, oh, how's your head?
It's so dramatic.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah. It's just like, people remember that because, if you have a visceral response to something, it kind of gets burned in your memory. Mm-hmm. So a lot of people had a visceral response because they weren't expecting it. And then I go crack my head on the board. The other thing, which is a total myth, and if you think about it, this makes sense. All of the reporters would say, because I never corrected it, they said, blood in the pool, blood in the pool, blood in the pool. There was no blood in the pool. You get an injury like that in a situation like that, everything's contracted. You don't bleed right away. Uh-huh. So there was no blood in the pool. I mean, and people will try and convince me that, oh, no, I saw it. It's like, no. Injuries like that, they don't bleed right away. But, getting back out there, it was funny because when I went up to do my next dive, which was I hit on a reverse 2.5 somersaults pike. I was doing a reverse 1.5 with 3.5 twists. And so I set the board, and when they announced the dive, I think it was 3.3 degree of difficulty at that time, I heard an audible gasp from the audience. And I just smiled, and I just took a deep breath, and I patted my chest because I felt like my heart was pounding outside my chest. And the people who saw that started chuckling, and I started laughing because there's like this energy exchange of, oh my God, he's nervous. And my coach said, just do it like you've been doing in practice. And so I had that thought, but I also had this thought, this is the Olympic Games, you can't hold back. So I did that dive next, and actually it turned out to be the highest scoring dive of that Olympics.
The doctor who treated Greg stitched him up poolside, not knowing about his HIV status. Greg told Barbara Walters in 1995 that he called that doctor years later to tell him he was HIV positive. In the moments after his injury, Greg says he just made one decision: to get back up on the springboard and dive again.
It really is my training. That's anything I did didn't seem extraordinary.
Will you explain that to me? Because I've never done that kind of rigorous training. It was so just part of a muscle memory thing that you didn't.
Well, okay, so I learned visualization when I was 3. It wasn't until the late 70s, early 80s, sports psychologists started coming around the pool and saying, have you tried mental imagery or visualization? I'm like going, duh, doesn't everybody do that? A lot of the things that I did by accident. I knew how important breath was. Because when I was a little kid, I had this teacher screaming at me, breathe, 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 through a routine. Very athletic, demanding, tumbling routine. Yeah. And I had to figure out where the breaths go. And so that was, another facet of the puzzle that is Greg Louganis. So I figured those things out myself by accident, but that was just my life. That was just who I was. I didn't think it was any different. I didn't think it was strange. I remember one time I was talking earlier in my career, I was talking to a teammate of mine, Jim Gray, and I had mentioned that I listened to the board. And he goes, oh my God, so do I. Because the diving board moves, and what happened when I was younger, my coach kept saying, ride the board, ride the board, ride the board. And I think I was 9 years old. And I said, what do you mean ride the board? He said, well, you'll hear the board beat against the fulcrum twice. And then you'll land on it. Well, as a dancer, that makes so much sense because it's the rhythm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was like I'd step up into my hurdle, I'd hear a beat, beat, and then I'd be landing on the board. So I knew the timing of that. And so I would listen to the board. And so I'd know how to make whatever adjustments I needed to make to be as successful as possible.
Coming up, Greg tells me how he's taken tools that made him an excellent diver, like visualization and focused breathing, and used them outside the pool. I get really stressed out about the amount of plastic that comes in and out of my house, even when I'm really trying to reduce how much plastic we use. And Blueland makes it easy to cut back. With products that I have to use, like laundry detergent or dishwashing soap or hand soap or toilet bowl cleaners, Blueland sends you containers that you can reuse and refill, which means we use less plastic in our household. The idea is simple. It's refillable cleaning products with a beautiful, cohesive design that looks great on our counter. Just fill the reusable bottles with water, drop in the tablets, and wait for them to dissolve. You'll never have to grab bulky cleaning supplies on your grocery run. And all Blueland products are made with clean ingredients that you feel good about. Blueland has a special offer for listeners of Death, Sex, and Money. Right now, get 15% off your first order by going to blueland.com/DSM. You don't want to miss this. blueland.com/DSM for 15% off. That's blueland.com/DSM to get 15% off.
This episode is brought to you by Experian. Are you paying for subscriptions you don't use but can't find the time or energy to cancel them? Experian could cancel unwanted subscriptions for you, saving you an average of $270 per year and plenty of time. Download the Experian app. Results will vary. Not all subscriptions are eligible. Savings are not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account required.
Hey, it's Kaylee Cuoco for Priceline. Ready to go to your happy place for a happy price? Well, why didn't you say so? Just download the Priceline app right now and save up to 60% on hotels. So whether it's Cousin Kevin's Kazoo Concert in Kansas City, go Kevin, or Becky's Bachelorette Bash in Bermuda, you never have to miss a trip ever again. So download the Priceline app today. Your savings are waiting.
Go to your happy place for a happy price. Go to your happy price, Priceline.
In 1988, Greg Louganis was 28 years old and in his third Olympic Games. He'd been competing at world championship level diving for more than a third of his life. I think what I want to understand your perspective on is you, along with your coach, under immense emotional stress in 1988 in particular, in the lead up to the Games for yourself. You know, to think about how you were able to get to that level of peak performance. I want to know more about the word care you use to describe your relationship with your coach. Because when I think of what peak performance means, it means as close to flawless as possible. And no, that's not how you think of it?
No.
No, tell me, why is that wrong?
Flow is not flawless. Flow is just flow. So there's no judgment. So there's no perfection. There is none of that. It's just what you do.
It's entering the flow. It's training your body to enter this set of movements. And you've done it so many times.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Well, because if you start judging yourself, then you're going to fall short. You know, because that's left brain.
Yeah.
So having that opportunity to practice so much peak performance over and over and again and again and again and again, you figure it out.
Yeah.
So then you can apply that to whatever else comes forward, whether it's a one-man show, whether it's a musical, whether it's a dance. You know, I did a one-man show in New York, played 14 different characters. The way that I described the show is it was the longest 10-meter dive I have ever done in my entire life. because you hit the stage and you don't know where you're going to land. You have no idea, and you just got to trust it and go with it. I shared this experience with a psychologist friend of mine. He wrote Train Your Own Hero, and I'm a big case study. He observed me. We didn't really work together, but I was doing the one-man show. It was 14 different characters, and so in the second scene, it was the second night with the audience. It was it was supposed to be a rehearsal, but we had an audience, and I went up in the second scene. And I turned to the audience and said, "I'm sorry, I'm lost." I started walking around the stage, and I was thinking, the script's backstage. It's in my dressing room. I can't call a line because the stage manager is working lights. And then in my homework, each character to me in my homework had a different color. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it was cadence. I didn't know if it was emotional state. I didn't judge it. Every character had a different color. So then I thought of the color of that character. Mm-hmm. Brought me right back into the piece. And I shared that. And he said, "Oh my God, that makes perfect sense, because when you're thinking logic, where the script is, stage manager, that's left brain. Performance lives in your right brain. Mm-hmm. Peak performance is right brain. Mm-hmm. So it's feeling, sensation, color, mm-hmm. music, taste, all of those things. And all of those things I have used, to stay in my right brain, to stay in performance. And so he said, when you thought of the color, that brought you back into the performance, and you probably weren't down as long as you think you were. Because it did. It felt like forever.
How would you describe what it's been like to go through aging, for someone who was a premier world-class athlete, and also someone who was diagnosed with HIV at a time when it wasn't clear if you were going to get to age? What's it been like for you?
Well, a friend of mine posted how strange it is to be here when we didn't expect to be here. Because I was diagnosed in 88, basically told you have 2 years, because that was life expectancy at that time, was, 2 years after diagnosed. I didn't expect to see 30, and now here I am, 64. And it's like, okay, I was, I viaticated my life insurance policy. This poor woman in Florida is still paying my life insurance because I viaticated it. And so she's paying it. It's like, I feel so bad. I'm sorry.
You just taught me a new word. I didn't know what viaticate a life insurance policy means. That means someone purchased your life insurance policy, and because you're still thriving, there's not been a return. That's what that means?
Yeah. Yeah.
When did you viaticate your life insurance policy? Was that something you did a long time ago?
Yeah, it was probably like late 80s, early 90s.
Wow.
Yeah, I was prepared to not be here. Uh-huh. So it's just a really strange place to be in. And discovering what that looks like, feels like, all of that other stuff. Also recently divorced, so, I'd love to be able to share this with somebody, but it's got to be the right person, right? Mm-hmm. And so, but also I'm not sure what that looks like, honestly.
Mm-hmm. I have just one final question, and that is, for the Olympians who are competing this year, who are going to face this onslaught of celebrity and exposure and moment of financial opportunity and also incredible pressure, emotional pressure.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to them about what to focus on in this moment, what to push through, and how to take care of themselves, knowing what you know?
I think the most important thing is anything positive or negative, life is in constant motion. So anything positive is only temporary. Anything negative is only temporary. This too shall pass. The other thing is, and this is something that I wish I had done a bit more of, not leaving things to other people to make decisions for you. To take a breath, take a moment, get in tune with your body and ask your body what feels right. Because you may have some decisions to make of, which direction you might want to go or what products to endorse. And you can be really clear. There's nothing wrong with, I want the money. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But there's also a consequence that there are other people watching, namely kids, who are watching and seeing the choices that you make. And so if you want to have an impact with that, long term, then, be mindful. Be mindful of what you do, be aware of what you do and the impact that has. And check in with yourself, take a breath, check in with your body and see how you feel. See how that sits with you.
That's Olympic champion diver Greg Louganis. He turned 64 earlier this year. His memoir is called Breaking the Surface. This episode was produced by Cameron Drews. Death, Sex, and Money is produced by Slate. Please support the production of our show by becoming a member of Slate Plus. You'll not only be supporting our work on Death, Sex, and Money, you'll also get access to benefits, including listening to us and all of the great shows that Slate makes, like Slow Burn and Decoder Ring, without sponsor breaks. To subscribe, just click Try Free at the top of the Death, Sex, and Money show page on Apple Podcasts, or go to slate.com/DSM Plus to get access wherever you listen. The people who make Death, Sex, and Money with me at Slate are Andrew Dunn, Zoe Azoulay, and Cameron Drews. Daisy Rosario is our senior supervising producer at Slate. Alicia Montgomery is Slate's head of audio. Our theme music is by the Reverend John DeLure and Steve Lewis. And if you're new to our show, welcome. We're glad you're here. Find us and follow us on Instagram at DeathSexMoney. You can find my weekly newsletter at annasale.substack.com. And reach us anytime with voice memos, pep talks, questions, or critiques at our email address, deathsexmoney@slate.com. We love hearing from you. After Olympic diving, Greg Louganis got into dog training. He even wrote a book about it called For the Life of Your Dog. And his technique is all about positive reinforcement for good behavior and rewards for a job well done.
With my Jack Russells, the reward was chasing the squirrels up the driveway. So it would be like, okay, everybody stays on the carpet. Sit. You have to allow me to open the front door. Then you have to allow me to open the gate. And if you continue to be in your spot, then and only then can you go chase squirrels.
I love that. I'm Anna Sale, and this is Death, Sex, and Money from Slate.
America. We are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable rights: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. By honoring your sacred vocation of business, you impact your family, your friends, and your community. At Grand Canyon University, our MBA degree program is 100% online, with emphases in business analytics and finance to help you reach your goals. Find your purpose at GCU. Private, Christian, affordable. Visit gcu.edu.